The Insignia's A20NHT is the first direct injection petrol engine featuring both a turbocharger and variable valve timing to be used in a saloon car. These technologies provide the Ecotec engine with added power and responsiveness, while simultaneously reducing fuel consumption. The engine has a power output of 162 kilowatts or 220 horsepower at 5,300 RPM and reaches its maximum torque of 350 Newton meters between 2,000 and 4,000 RPM. The A20NHT is based on the A20NHT engine from the Opel GT. In contrast to this engine, however, the power steering pump is in a different position. However, it continues to be driven by the V-belt. The position of the vacuum pump on the cylinder head housing is also new, as a result of which the housing has been redesigned in this area. Replacing the turbocharger in an Insignia with the A20NHT engine and all-wheel drive is a relatively complex procedure. First, the coolant must be drained and the battery earth cable disconnected. Lift off the engine cover and remove the air filter intake pipe. Remove the intercooler intake pipe and unscrew the turbocharger exhaust heat shield. Unscrew the coolant return line as well as the coolant feed line. Detach the vacuum hose from the turbocharger bypass valve. Detach the plug for oxygen sensor 1 and use the special service tool to remove the oxygen sensor. Unscrew the 4 nuts for the catalytic converter from the turbocharger and detach the front wheel on the right-hand side. Undo the steering column universal joint to relieve loading on the steering gear. Detach the rear exhaust pipe as well as the propeller shaft. This procedure is described in detail in video VT76. Now unscrew the front exhaust pipe. The catalytic converter bracket and oxygen sensor 2 can now be removed. Undo the stabilizer shaft link, as well as the tie rod. Remove the two lower plastic clips from the right-hand front wheel house trim. Likewise, remove the lower plastic clips on the front bumper fascia. Support the front axle body using a hydraulic jack at the location shown. And remove the front axle body reinforcement. Next, unscrew the fastening bolt for the reaction member damper. Detach the steering assembly heat shield and undo the stabilizer shaft bolts on the right-hand side. Now, lower the frame by no more than 50 millimeters. Remove the catalytic converter over the right-hand wheelhouse by rotating it clockwise, as shown. Disconnect the wastegate unit solenoid valve from the turbocharger. Remove the strut from the turbocharger. And unscrew the oil feed line. Detach the turbocharger oil return line. And remove the gasket. Unscrew the turbocharger nuts. Screw in the front axle body reinforcement bolts, hand tighten, and remove the hydraulic jack. Unscrew and detach the crankcase vent hose. Now, remove the turbocharger and take off the gasket. It's essential to clean the sealing flange and check it for any damage. Installation begins by inserting a new gasket. And positioning the turbocharger. Fit the crankcase vent hose and reposition the hydraulic jack. Unscrew the bolts and lower the front axle body by no more than 50 millimeters. Screw on the turbocharger nuts and tighten as specified in the service literature. Fit a new gasket to the turbocharger oil return line connect and tighten the bolts as specified in the service literature. Repeat the procedure for the turbocharger oil feed line. Fit the strut to the turbocharger and connect the wastegate unit solenoid valve to the turbocharger. Fit a new seal to the catalytic converter. To install the catalytic converter, insert it over the right-hand wheelhouse as shown and rotate it anti-clockwise in order to position it correctly. Tighten the bolts for the stabilizer shaft as specified in the service literature and reinstall the steering assembly heat shield. Use the hydraulic jack to raise the front axle body again. Screw in the bolts for the front axle body reinforcement loosely. Screw in the fastening bolt for the reaction member damper and tighten as specified in the service literature. The bolts for the front axle body reinforcement can now also be tightened as specified in the service literature. Reinsert the plastic clips for the front bumper fascia and wheelhouse trim. Reinstall the tie rod as specified in the service literature. Fit the stabilizer shaft link and tighten as specified in the service literature. Screw in oxygen sensor 2, tighten as specified in the service literature, and connect. Attach the catalytic converter bracket by first loosely screwing in the lower bolts and nuts so that the bracket can still be moved. Screw on 4 new nuts for the catalytic converter at the turbocharger and tighten as specified in the service literature. Now, tighten the bolts and nuts for the catalytic converter bracket as specified in the service literature. Next, install the front exhaust pipe, the propeller shaft, and the rear exhaust pipe. Reinstall the steering column universal joint, and fit the right-hand front wheel. Install oxygen sensor 1 and connect the vacuum hose to the turbocharger bypass valve. Attach the coolant feed line along with a new seal and connect the coolant return line with a new seal. Reinstall the heat shield. Connect the intercooler intake pipe and install the air filter intake pipe. Finally, attach the engine cover, top up the coolant and reconnect the battery. Before removing the injectors, ensure that all pressure in the fuel system has been relieved. Then detach all relevant connections and parts. These are the purge control solenoid valve of the vapor handling system, the vacuum hose for the brake booster, the MAP sensor, the turbocharger control solenoid valve, the oil level indicator, the charge air hose to the engine, the intake manifold bracket, the fuel supply line, and the high-pressure pump feed line. The fuel lines should be sealed with plugs. Now, unscrew the intake manifold bolts and lift off the intake manifold as well as the gasket. Detach the electrical connector for the fuel rail and the acoustic insulation. Unscrew the high-pressure fuel line and seal all ports and openings. All 4 electrical connectors should be detached from the injectors. Unscrew the fuel rail bolts. Now lever out the fuel rail. Use 2 screwdrivers and a length of hose when doing so, in order to avoid damaging the cylinder head. Remove the spring clips. And pull out the injectors by hand. If this proves difficult, use a special service tool, an adapter, and the slide hammer. To remove the valves. Use the cleaning kit to thoroughly clean the valve boreholes. As well as the intake manifold sealing surface. Remove the O-ring and the plastic spacer from the valve. Remove the seal ring as shown. Then clean the groove using a clean cloth. Inspect the injectors thoroughly for any damage. All parts shown here must be replaced. When inserting the plastic spacer, ensure that it's positioned correctly. The wider sealing surface must point towards the O-ring. Insert a new spacer Position a new oiled O-ring and attach a new spring clip. Use the installer to pull on and position the seal ring as shown. Insert the injectors into the fuel rail. And push the installer onto each of the 4 injectors once more. Then, immediately insert the fuel rail. Screw in the bolts and tighten as specified in the service literature. Reconnect the electrical connectors for the injectors. Insert the acoustic insulation. And restore the electrical connection to the fuel rail. Fit a new high-pressure fuel line and tighten the nuts to the correct torque as specified in the service literature. Insert a new intake manifold gasket. Position the intake manifold screw in the bolts and tighten to the correct torque as specified in the service literature. Reinstall and connect all remaining parts. Finally, with the engine running, perform a visual inspection for fuel system tightness. Follow the safety instructions whilst doing so. Updates of the 1.3-litre diesel engines with 2 performance levels are available for the Corsa D, Mariva B and Astra J. One version has an output of 55 kilowatts and generates a maximum torque of 190 Newton meters at 1750 RPM. A more powerful engine develops 70 kilowatts. It generates a maximum torque of 210 Newton meters at 1750 RPM. Both engines meet the Euro 5 emission standard. This required some significant changes to be made compared to the previous engines. Whereas the 1.3-litre diesel engines previously featured underbody particulate filters, a close-coupled particulate filter is now being introduced. This has meant repositioning the temperature sensor as well as the differential pressure sensor. The new particulate filter also affects the position of the turbocharger. The oxygen sensor also has a new position. In addition, a new exhaust gas recirculation cooler is used. The maintenance-free GF6 automatic transmission, developed within the GM Group, will have its debut in Opel's Astra J. The GF6 transmission is clearly distinguishable from the AF40 transmission. Whereas the control unit for the AF40 is attached to the outside of the housing, the plug in the cover of the GF6 indicates an internal control unit. The GF6 is available in the Astra in combination with the A20NHT, A16XER and A16LET engines. A distinction is made between the transmission variants 6T40 and 6T45. To identify the transmission variant, locate the area shown on the lower side of the transmission housing. If the space indicated is approximately 6 millimeters, then it is a 6T40 transmission. The space is around 12 millimeters in the case of a 6T45. Removal and installation of the transmission requires use of the transmission holder. The positions of the individual adapters are specified in the service literature. After removing the transmission, the torque converter must be fixed in position using a special retainer. Before carrying out any service work on the transmission fluid must be drained. After the job has been completed, top up with new fluid. Use the same amount of fluid as was previously drained. Then check the transmission fluid level. Begin by starting the engine. And with the brake pedal pressed, move the selector lever through all of the modes, leaving it in each one for approximately 3 seconds. Then move the lever back to park. Let the engine idle for at least 3 minutes to allow foaming, which may have occurred, to recede and the fluid level to stabilize. With the engine running, monitor the transmission fluid temperature using the probe. It must remain between 85 and 95 degrees Celsius. Otherwise, a correct top-up is not possible. This could lead to a damaged transmission or oil leakage. Unscrew the filling hole cap along with the vent hose. Raise the vehicle with the engine idling. Unscrew the fluid checking bolt. The fluid level is correct if the transmission fluid trickles out of the check bore. In this case, screw in the fluid checking bolt again. Wipe away fluid residue from the housing and tighten the bolt as specified in the service literature. If no transmission fluid flows out of the check bore, then lower the vehicle again and, with the engine running, slowly top up the transmission fluid via the filling hole until it flows out of the check bore. Allow it to flow until it becomes just a trickle. Tighten the filling hole cap, including vent hose. Raise the vehicle and screw in the fluid checking bolt. Wipe away fluid residue and tighten the bolt. Finish by examining the transmission for external leaks. For reasons of clarity, the following procedures are demonstrated on a removed transmission. They can, however, be performed with the transmission in place. Note that cleanliness is essential during work on the transmission. Also note that despite the drained transmission fluid, some fluid will remain in the transmission. In order to perform work on the valve body, begin by unscrewing the cover of the transmission control valve housing. Detach the electrical connector for the output speed sensor. The connector for the selector lever position switch should be released and detached, and the connector for the input speed sensor removed. Unscrew the 3 bolts on the transmission control unit as well as the 12 bolts for the control valve. And remove the entire group. Detach and dispose of the filter panel. Take care while doing so. A broken or missing fastening strap may cause the filter panel to sit incorrectly, resulting in potential damage or contamination to the group. The pressure switch seals and channel plate bolt through holes must be checked for damage. Replace the control valve group if necessary. Remove the oil guide tube, including thermostat, and remove its gasket. Unscrew all 11 bolts from the control valve body. Bear in mind that the bolts have different lengths. Then remove the control valve body. Also remove the spacer. Remove the spring for the selector lever position switch. Remove the 2 oil duct seals, dispose of them, and replace with new ones. Insert the spring for the selector lever position switch. And tighten the bolt as specified in the service literature. Insert the spacer, and reposition the control valve body. Tighten the bolts to the correct torque in the order specified. Fit a new gasket to the oil guide tube. And insert. Install a new filter panel in the control valve group in order to avoid fluid leaks behind the seals. Install the control valve group along with the transmission control unit. And tighten the bolts as specified in the service literature. The connector for the selector lever position switch should be connected and secured, and the connector for the output speed sensor reconnected. Likewise, the connector for the input speed sensor. Remove the control unit connector seal and replace with a new one. The same applies to the control valve housing cover gasket. Reattach the cover and tighten the bolts as instructed in the service literature. Once the repair is complete, perform the programming, setup and training procedures as specified in the service literature. To replace the selector lever position switch, the control valve must first be removed. Then pull out the gear shift shaft pin using a suitable tool. Use a pair of pliers to remove the locking pin for the selector lever position switch and dispose of it. Remove the gear shift shaft and selector lever position switch. Use a slide hammer and extractor to remove the gear shift shaft seal, and use the installer to insert a new seal. Position the selector lever position switch. And insert the gear shift shaft. Use the installer to fit a new gear shift shaft pin. A new pin must be used to ensure proper connection with the housing. Then check whether the installation depth matches the dimensions specified in the service literature. Now install the locking pin for the selector lever position switch using the special service tool. And as before, check that the installation depth is correct according to the service literature. Following installation of the control valve body, it's essential that the selector lever position switch is in the position shown, otherwise shift operations will not be possible. Finally, reinstall the control valve housing and perform the training procedure. If a diagnosis reveals that one of the speed sensors is defective, the control valve housing must first be removed. If the output speed sensor requires replacement, unscrew its bolt. Remove the sensor and replace with a new one. Finally, tighten the bolt as specified in the service literature and perform the training procedure. The input speed sensor must be removed if the sensor is defective or the seal is damaged. Although the rear sensor seal can be replaced without removing the control valve housing. To remove the sensor, unscrew the bolt. Turn the sensor through roughly 90 degrees. And undo the two retaining tabs from the transmission housing, as shown. The sensor can now be taken out. Remove the 3 sensor seals. And replace with new ones. Position the input speed sensor and check that the retaining tabs engage correctly. Insert the bolt. And tighten as specified in the service literature. Finally, fit the control valve housing and perform the training procedure as specified in the service literature. To replace the left-hand seal for the front-wheel drive shaft, use the slide hammer and the seal puller to remove the seal. Use the handle and the installer to insert the new seal. The same procedure applies for replacement of the seal on the right-hand side. Replacement of the torque converter and its seal is always performed in the removed state. As oil flows out in the process, always place a collecting pan underneath. In the removed state, the converter is held by a special retainer. To remove the converter, 2 handles should be screwed on. And the special retainer removed. The torque converter can now be taken out. To replace the seal, begin by removing the circlip. Use the slide hammer and extractor to remove the seal. And replace it with a new one. Insert a new circlip. Position the torque converter and bolt on the special retainer. Finally, unscrew the two handles. Exhaust emissions such as hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides and particulate matter are minimized in the diesel exhaust gas treatment system. Depending on the model and engine, diesel vehicles either have an underbody particulate filter or a close-coupled version. The maintenance-free diesel particulate filter removes soot and unburned hydrocarbons from the diesel exhaust. It consists of a hard, honeycombed housing of silicon carbide with numerous microscopically small channels and is coated with a noble metal. The exhaust emissions flow through the channels and soot particles are deposited on the channel walls. Depending on the driving profile and soot development, the particles are burned within the particulate filter channels via a process known as regeneration. The fill level is determined by the differential pressure sensor. The regeneration process thereby prevents clogging of the diesel particulate filter and helps maintain consistent engine performance. The ECM engine control unit triggers regeneration when the filter is full. Regeneration is performed while the vehicle is being driven. The regeneration procedure begins with a delayed and extended post-injection, thereby increasing the temperature in the catalytic converter. Thanks to a further post-injection, unburned fuel enters the exhaust system. As the fuel afterburns in the catalytic converter, the exhaust temperature rises to around 600 degrees Celsius. The particulate filter heats up and burns the soot deposits to form carbon dioxide. The following information should be given to the customer in order to ensure correct regeneration. The length of time required for regeneration depends on the driving style during the regeneration process. The important thing is that once started, the regeneration phase be completed. In model year 2009 vehicles with a screen display, such as the Insignia, the following displays indicate maximum particulate filter fill level and ongoing regeneration. If the vehicle has a mid-range display, then code 55 is shown. If a higher range display is installed, a message appears. In model year 2010 vehicles, such as the Mariva, a distinction is made between different diesel particulate filter levels of fill. In the case of a mid-range display, code 55 is shown, along with the regeneration icon when regeneration is recommended. The higher range display shows both a message and the regeneration icon in this case. If the diesel particulate filter reaches its maximum fill level, then the regeneration icon flashes on both display versions. In this case, it's essential that regeneration be completed. Regeneration is complete when the messages shown are no longer displayed. If the displays mentioned are accompanied by the workshop light, then the vehicle must be taken to a service workshop. The Insignia and some Astra J models with hydraulic steering feature an elastic power steering pump belt. In order to replace the belt, cut it using a pair of side-cutting pliers. Under no circumstances should you detach and reuse the belt, as non-visible damage occurs during removal. Attach a ratchet to the crankshaft and position the installer and the new belt. Slowly turn the engine clockwise using the crankshaft, thereby fitting the belt. It's essential that the belt fits onto the water pump pulley correctly. Remove the installer and check that the belt has been installed correctly. Observe all safety regulations during servicing work on the high-pressure fuel lines. In addition, ensure that pressure in the system has been relieved. To replace the lines, begin by removing the engine cover and detaching the overflow oil lines. Unscrew the nuts and detach the lines. Attach the new lines and screw on the nuts by hand initially. To tighten to the correct torque, use an open-ended torque wrench. When tightening with the torque wrench, it's essential that you comply with the tightening torques specified in the literature. Otherwise, leaks or damage may result. Always bear in mind that the size of the nut gives no indication whatsoever regarding the required tightening torque. Reinstall the overflow oil lines and check for leak tightness. Finish by reattaching the engine cover. The engine bridge carrier and engine bridge are the tools for precise and safe servicing work on the engine and transmission. The concept, co-developed by General Motors and SPX Service Solutions, guarantees the highest possible occupational safety and prevents damage to vehicle components. Each vehicle has its specific mounting points. The engine bridge carrier and engine bridge can be easily adapted to fit various models such as the Astra J, Insignia and Meriva B. Further information on this subject is available in service videos VT62, VT67, VT73 and VN15. The flexible engine bridge carrier concept has now been extended by SPX Service Solutions to include a workshop trolley concept. All previously developed adapters for the engine bridge carrier and engine bridge can be stored in large drawers, thereby protecting them from damage and loss and ensuring that they're readily at hand. In addition, the new workshop trolley offers space for tools, such as the existing universal transmission jack, that are required for procedures in combination with the engine bridge. This also helps to streamline service work. The engine bridge can also be pre-assembled directly on the workshop trolley. This saves time and is both safe and ergonomic. Detailed assembly instructions are included in the supply scope. Both workshop trolleys and instructions will be amended and extended for future models. Another major advantage is increased mobility. The trolley can be moved safely and without any effort around the workshop. In addition, the workshop trolley can be transported using a suitable vehicle, thereby allowing the engine bridge to be used in other service workshops as well.